Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my January 2026 reading wrap-up. If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but today we're just talking about the books. And in fact, we're mostly talking about the stats. I'm going to start with my nerdy hardcore stats and charts and then briefly get into my books. Also, I put chapter markers in all of my videos, so if you need to skip over anything or go back to anything, all of that is down in the description below. While you're checking out the description, please make sure you're subscribed because YouTube likes to unsubscribe people just for funsies, and why not give this video a like? That would be very nice of you. As a reminder, I'm going to go over the prompt for Read Queer all year and my bingo board from hell at the end of the video, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Just before we get started, I wanted to let you know that I'm going to be changing up how I do my monthly videos going forward. For these videos specifically, I'm still going to be using them to go over the data of what I read in the month. So all of the glorious nerdy charts that I usually have, that is staying put. I'm also going to tell you exactly what I read during the month, listing everything in star rating like usual. However, I'm no longer going to be giving lengthy wrap-ups of everything to do with that book and my thoughts on that book because I already do that in my weekly videos, and doubling it up just because some people like this format better than the other format is a lot. Therefore, in the description, I'm going to tell you exactly which weekly wrap-up I talk about each of these books in, so if you're really interested in hearing my thoughts on it, you can go over to that video. That way, I'm not having to repeat myself. Editing these videos takes a lot less time that way, and it really helps to make me feel like I'm not a broken record. In January, I read 22 books for a total of 6,581 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so 3,295 of those pages were actually about 105 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 18 adult books, 3 YA books, and 1 middle grade book. I read 16 novels, 4 anthologies, 1 graphic novel, and 1 novella. This month, the biggest chunk of what I read was fantasy, followed by nonfiction, horror, romance, historical fiction, and mystery thriller. If you adjust by page count, not too much changes. All but one of these books are from the library, but I also read 1 from NetGalley. I read 12 audiobooks, 6 hardcovers, 3 paperbacks, and 1 ebook. Almost all of my books were in the 200 to 399 page range, and the majority were published this decade. I read mostly women authors this month, but protagonists were more of a mixed bag. In terms of setting, half were set in the US, but I also had reads set in the UK, other worlds, Netherlands, France, and Ireland. In terms of diversity of subject matter, a big chunk were intersectional, with other books that were queer, had to do with race, mental health, disability, or feminism, and a small chunk of books that didn't tick any boxes. In terms of star ratings, this month I had 2 3-star reads, 3 3.5-star reads, 12 4-star reads, 2 4.5-star reads, and 3 5-star reads. Let's start with the lowest rated read and work our way up to the highest, shall we? Starting out with my 3 stars, the first one is Whose Body by Dorothy L. Sayers. This was the beginning of a mystery series, with the main detective character being this guy named Lord Peter Wimsey. This is a book that is over 100 years old, so there was definitely some random racism in it. Next, we move on to a graphic novel called The Harrowing. This is about a character who, when she was growing up, her mother was a germaphobe, and that impacted their lives a little bit, and then her mother was no longer around, and she found out she wasn't actually a germaphobe, and it's much more complicated than that. Moving on to my 3.5-star reads, the first one is Stone Blind. This one is a retelling of the myth of Medusa, but also it's got a much larger scope than that. So at the beginning of it, I didn't really understand where we were going for it, and it had the same problems for me that Circe had, which is it felt like a lot of vignettes to a story, but not really cohesive. That changed towards the end. This is actually a book that I finished this week, so this will be in my next wrap-up. Next we have Bright Eye Burn, which takes place in the 1200s and the 1300s in Ireland, and it's all following this one woman who goes through a bunch of different suitors and husbands, and whether or not she had anything to do with their demise, it's up to interpretation, I suppose. And finally, for this category, we have Natural Beauty, which is about this woman who used to be a pianist, but is now working at a place that sells beauty supplies, and the weird things that happen with that. On to my 4-star reads, which is honestly always the longest list because that is the star rating that tends to go towards most of my books. I like them, but I don't love them, but I like them type of thing. First we have House of Hollow, which is about these 3 sisters who may or may not have some special powers, and whether or not they are still in school, or if they've gone off on adventures, or if one of them has gotten lost and the other sisters have to find her. After that we have Hate, Why We Should Resist It with Free Speech, Not Censorship, and it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's basically talking about how if you try to censor people who are using hate speech that never ends well, because then those laws are disproportionately used against the people they're trying to help. Next we have Let This Radicalize You. This is from a couple of people who have been activists for decades, and it's just their tips about how to organize and how to be activists and how to get yourself from being a news hobbyist, so somebody who understands what's going on in the world, to somebody who's actually helping. After that we have the novella that I listened to this month, and that is Graveyard Shift. This is about a group of characters who meet up in the graveyard that is on or near the campus where some of them study, some of them teach, and some of them just work nearby, and they meet up here because this is an appropriate place for them to smoke. They're all smokers and they're all insomniacs, so they tend to meet up here, and this book takes place over basically a nighttime where they all seem to notice, hey, there's a freshly dug grave, but this is not a graveyard that people still get buried in, so what's up with that? Next we have Queen Bee, which is the prequel to the Her Majesty's Royal Coven trilogy. This one actually goes back to the beginning of the coven that we see in the trilogy and to the time of Anne Boleyn, because she was one of the founding members. Next we have A Magic Deep in Drowning. This is basically a Little Mermaid retelling, but it's not exactly a one-for-one retelling. It's definitely a reimagining of mermaid tales that definitely have some of the same aspects, and this one takes place in the Netherlands, which I really liked because obviously that's where Hans Christian Andersen's from, so I liked seeing that inclusion. Next we have The Last Olympian, which is the 5th Percy Jackson and the Olympians book, and obviously being that far into the series I can't really tell you too much about it, besides I am really starting to enjoy this. There was a point towards the beginning of the series where it seemed very formulaic, and obviously we are still going through kind of a formula because we know there's going to be battle sequences and that type of thing, but we're also getting to know characters, and there's different character arcs that are continuing, which I enjoy. Next we have Coffee Shop in an Alternate Universe. This is all about a girl who stumbles into a coffee shop because she needs to actually send off some applications for a scholarship she's trying to win, and unbeknownst to her she's actually stumbled into a different universe and meets this girl. They plan a date, but whether or not they can stumble back and towards each other's universes for these dates is something you're gonna have to find out when you read the book. After that we have You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. This is the epitome of messy queers. This is all about this woman whose husband died 5 years ago. She's finally getting back into the dating scene, and it is a very messy circumstance. Next we have Dreadful, which is all about this character who wakes up in this castle and doesn't remember who he is, but it kind of susses out he must be the Dark Lord of this castle, and has to try to figure out what he's supposed to be doing and where he goes from here. This one had a really comedic tone and I very much enjoyed it. Next we have a new release for this month, which is Last First Kiss, and this one is actually between two side characters from another book I'm going to talk about later because I gave it slightly higher of a rating. But basically these two characters were childhood friends. Actually one of them gave the other his very first kiss ever, and now we're in the present where the one character has to figure out what his sexuality is and why he's always thinking about this other character. Finally, for this category, we have Do Your Worst, which is an enemies to lover romance between this archaeologist and this curse breaker. And if that's not enough to get you interested in this, they are actually working at this very old castle in Scotland that definitely has a curse, but obviously the archaeologist thinks that's garbage. On to my 4.5 star reads. The first one is something I just finished listening to, and that's The Art Thief. This is all about this guy who in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s stole hundreds of things from 7 different countries in Europe, just as kind of a hobby. He wasn't doing it for financial gain. It started out as an aesthetic thing, and then by the end of it, his room was basically just this warehouse of stuff that he wasn't treating all too well. And I found it fascinating. My other 4.5 is the book I alluded to earlier, which is I Think They Love You. This is between two different characters who used to date in college and now have run into each other again in their 20s. One of them works for his family business, which is an event planning business, and the other one had previously gone away to London. Now he's back and they have to do some fake dating in order for the first person to maybe get a promotion at his job. And then, of course, shenanigans ensue. On to my 5-star reads. The first two are nonfiction, and then the last one is fiction. The first one I'll talk about is Before We Were Trans. This is a history of gender nonconforming people throughout the ages, and obviously the complications of talking about different people who may or may not have been trans, because that terminology wasn't used in their time, so obviously they're not self-identifying, and therefore people of today are like, well, you can't say they're trans because they didn't say they're trans. And you're like, yeah, well, they didn't have the terminology back then. Obviously giving examples and talking more about that complication. The other nonfiction book in this category is Educated, which is a fascinating memoir about this woman who grew up in this very strict religious household and the absolutely dangerous things that went on because safety was never a concern, and then how her life was changed when she was actually able to be formally educated and how she went on to actually go to some very prestigious schools. Finally, my favorite book this month was Death at a Highland Wedding, which is the fourth in the A Rip Through Time series by Kelly Armstrong. I absolutely love this series. I can't tell you too much about this one, obviously, because spoilers for the other ones, but our main character in this one is actually from Vancouver. She's 30 years old, and she's in Edinburgh, Scotland, because her grandmother isn't doing too well, so she's visiting. While she's visiting, she goes for a run, she sees something in this close. One thing leads to another, and she wakes up in the body of a 20-year-old servant, 150 years previously. Not only does she kind of have to figure out why is this time traveling thing happening, but she also has to stumble through helping these people solve these different cases while she's there. This is a fantastic series, and obviously this one takes place in the Highlands, so a couple of the characters have traveled for this circumstance, and now we have this whole new set of characters, and it's basically a big whodunit. When it comes to Read Queer All Year, I changed up how the prompts were working this year. So every month that doesn't have a full round of the Queer Lit Readathon just has one prompt instead of a bingo board of 4, because I feel like I was honestly the only one trying to black out every single one every single month, and that was a lot for me personally. So just one prompt, and that prompt for this month was fresh and unfamiliar, so debuts or new to use. 3 books that fit those qualifications this month were House of Hollow, Natural Beauty, and Graveyard Shift. As for my bookish bingo board from hell, I'm actually going to slide over for the first time in this video because it's a little bit wider as a graphic. Here you go. So I guess this is also the first time I'm telling you what my prompts for this bingo board are, because obviously they change year to year. I decided I wanted to read at least 100 audiobooks this year, which seems like a lot until you realize that's only 2 a week, and I'm very much rocketing through this particular prompt. Currently, I'm sitting at 12, which is way more than I needed to read. I also obviously want to finish my 40 before 40 TBR because that deadline is coming up in April, and I have 9 books left and I haven't finished any, although I am currently reading one of them. I also decided there's a bunch of things that I don't read because they're in digital format just on my phone and I don't think about them because out of sight, out of mind, so I have read 1 from that category, and that's better than usual, so we're gonna go for it. As for page-bound badges, I've got 9 out of the 10 I wanted to get, and the biggest reason for that is they did a huge update recently where they actually made it so there's higher badge classes, and because I had already read a bunch of books on those quests that weren't counted because I had already got the highest amount, which was 15 at the time, now some of those badges have been bumped up, so it feels like cheating a little bit because I didn't read a bunch of books specifically for those quests. I had already read a bunch of books specifically that would go towards those quests if there were higher badge amounts. So instead of just having bronze, silver, and gold, now have some gemstones when you get to 20 books, 25 books, 30, 35, 50, those types of things, but it depends on how many books are in the quest to begin with. So I bumped up a bunch of those. And there were also some new quests that came out that immediately upon joining, I got badges for those as well, because as we know, I've read a lot of books. So I've got 9 out of 10. I might want to bump this prompt up, or I might just want to try to do it over and over again. We'll find out as the year goes on. I've decided to keep that middle square as an emoji read, but I haven't actually asked anyone to give me emojis yet, so if you would comment down below with an emoji that I can use to pick a book to read to fulfill this prompt, that would be really great. Please do that now. I also decided I want to finish at least 3 series because I'm really good at starting series but not very good at finishing them, and I've done this once with the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series because I had previously read the 3 books that are the main part of the series, but as you might recall, I finished the prequel this month, so that is 1 series complete. I also have this list of books that are horror relics, so really old books that are really big in the horror genre, like things that I've probably seen the adaptation or at least know about, but I haven't actually read the book, so I want to read at least 5 of those, and I haven't done any of that this month. I also have a bunch of books that I've gotten from book boxes and have been completely ignored, so I do want to read at least 5 of those because I tend to ignore my own library and get books from the actual library, so let's read some of those, please. And then I do want to do at least 3 themed vlogs this year. I am working on one. I have been working on one since 2022, 2, so I know that one will at least happen, but if you have any ideas for vlogs you would like to see from me, please let me know. If you want to hear me talk more about these books, or other books for that matter, the playlist for my weekly entertainment wrap-ups is always linked down below, and like I said, I will be putting down below where you can find each of these books I talked about here, but with a slightly more thorough wrap-up. If you've read any of these, or you now want to read any of these, please let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!